Over the course of human history, we have had a long history of violence. From assassinations to conquests, it seems though every few decades we like to repeat the mistakes of our past. However, among these events of darkness on our timeline, there seems to be some worse than others. Witch hunts. A witch hunt is the searching out and deliberate harassment of those with unpopular views. Some of these have been smaller, like the Salem witch trials, but others have resulted in the death of millions, such as the Holocaust. But no matter the scale, once everything is all said and done, the human race reflects on their wrongdoings from the atrocity and vows to never let it happen again. Well, ladies and gentlemen, one of these times is upon us now, and it is necessary for our intervention, or we are looking at the next Holocaust. I speak as millions of Chinese Muslims are being held in internment camps solely based on the religion they choose to practice. These Muslims are being tortured to the point of madness, and the only thing making this the next Holocaust is that there is no proof the Chinese government is committing mass murder on these people. As I'm sure you already know, the Holocaust stemmed from Adolf Hitler's despising the Jewish people simply because they were Jewish. Later, when he got into power, he slowly would incriminate these people more and more until he had the authority and support to take them into internment camps and kill them. In China, something very similar is happening. Over the course of 3 years, since 2017, the Chinese government has been moving the Muslim population into internment camps, or training centers, as a government official called it in a CBS interview. In the same interview, the journalist from CBS asked the officials about the testimonies of people who have been through the system. These people claim they have been tortured and that the conditions are poor. All the officials have to say about this is that these people would commit crimes. He brings up an example that murderers tend to all have the same personality traits, allowing you to find them without evidence of a crime. That is what he claims they are doing in these training centers. They are rehabilitating people who have never committed a crime or even been tried. Rahima gave her testimony to PBS News. She was in the camp for a year, and the reason they gave her for her sentence was because she had the WhatsApp on her phone. However, this is the exception. Most people in the camps have never broken the law, even the tiniest one. The only thing connecting these prisoners is the religion they practice. In the Holocaust, Hitler claimed it was their radical religious beliefs that made the Jewish population dangerous to the rest of the world. In China, they don't even have to point the finger. They've brainwashed the prisoners to do it themselves. As well as interviews from government officials, CBS was also able to get insight from the prisoners at the camp. And this is what an inmate had to say. I was affected by extremism. I've come to transform my thoughts. We know from CBS that every interview is supervised by an official, and Rahima's insight has told us that the prisoners have to say certain things or they are threatened to be sent to a worse camp, meaning that we can't trust what the man is telling us. However, we can gather information from reading in between the lines. In this case, we see that the Chinese government is trying to make these people to be seen as criminals, as the German government did to the Jewish population not too long ago. But the religious persecution isn't the only similarity the Holocaust and the Muslims being held in China have. In addition, both minorities have been tortured severely. They have been tortured severely at the camps they are trying to stay at. In PBS interview, the camp survivors Rahima and Golzira explained the mental and physical torture the prisoners were subjected to. Rahima compares it to being a zombie. She says you are without a mind, only thinking about the day you might be free. While Rahima describes the more psychological torture, Gazira tells about the physical torture she faced. She claims if you use the bathroom for more than 2 minutes, you'll be get hit with a metal pole. That twice she had to sit in a chair for 24 hours and wasn't allowed to move. They would beat you, shout at you. It was so bad that many people were driven to suicide. Not only that, but a leaked document reported by BBC gives the government's perspective on how the prisoners are treated. In a memo from the Communist Party head of security, Zhu Halin, he tells workers in the camp to never allow escape, increase discipline and punishments of behavioral violations. Likewise, the inmates of the Holocaust were subjected to verbal abuse, physical abuse, and were forced into intense labor, and even things such as burning their fellow inmates alive. In light of this evidence, you would be blind to ignore these similarities and not see that we have a full-blown witch hunt on our tailcoats. But I have a plan to stop this injustice in its tracks. Witch hunts are caused by fear. Fear leads to panic, and panic leads to persecution. According to Science Daily, fear is more often than not caused by the unknown. In the 1900s Germany, the economy was failing, causing fear throughout the country, and instead of seeing this, what caused this, which was the loss in war as well as the poor political leaders of that time, they could have found a solution for their struggles. But that didn't happen. Instead, Germany's problems were pushed onto the Jewish population, causing their persecution. Although we don't know exactly why Muslims are being put into these internment camps other than to prevent crime, which doesn't exactly translate to the Holocaust, we can still use education to stop what is happening. A large part of the world doesn't even know what's going on in China, especially in the US. But by informing the masses, they could persuade their government to interfere. We have seen this done several times throughout history, whether it be the protests that led to black rights or women's rights. And we all know how influential America can be. We were on the winning side of both world wars. We inspired a multitude of revolutions across the world after declaring ours. Our economy and political influence has made us a world power, and if the U.S. government was to interfere with what was happening in China, I'm sure it would end. This is the biggest witch hunt we've seen since the Holocaust. Don't allow it to be the biggest. We owe the people a chance at freedom, just as we get to relish in it every day. So educate the people on this injustice, because knowledge and power, and with all the similarities that this has to the Holocaust, this is something we want power over.